Our top story, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a state visit to the United States. That landmark trip is seen as a turning point for bilateral relations with deeper cooperation in the defense industry and sharing high technology in sharp focus. Today, that's on Wednesday, Prime Minister Modi will be leading the celebrations of the International Day of Yoga at the United Nations headquarters. Starting in 2014, the International Day of Yoga has become one of the major events in the annual calendar of the activities of the United Nations. In New York, Prime Minister Modi has a packed schedule and is meeting Nobel laureates, economists, artists, scientists, scholars, entrepreneurs, academicians and health sector experts. After meeting the Prime Minister, the Tesla CEO Elon Musk said that the electric car maker will try to be in India as soon as humanly possible.
It was a fantastic meeting with the Prime Minister, and I like him quite a lot. He visited our Fremont factory several years ago, and so we've now known each other for a while. He really wants to do the right thing for India. He wants to be open, he wants to be supportive of new companies, and obviously, but at the same time, make sure it accrues to India's advantage.
Now, Washington, D.C. will roll out the red carpet on the 22nd of June when Joe Biden hosts Narendra Modi. The U.S. President will hold bilateral talks with the Indian Prime Minister. On the 23rd of June, the Indian Prime Minister will be hosted by U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Prime Minister Modi's U.S. visit is expected to give India access to critical American technologies Washington rarely shares with non-allies. The two countries are working together on advanced tech from AI to semiconductor chips and quantum computing, especially in defense. The Biden administration is all set to sign a deal that would allow US-based General Electric to produce engines for military aircraft on Indian soil. While India can manufacture jets domestically, it is keen to get the technical know-how to make the aircraft engines. India intends to produce more than 350 fighter jets for its Air Force and Navy over the next 2 decades, which could be powered by the GE engine. Another expected announcement is India's purchase of 31 armed MQ-9B Sea Guardian drones made by General Atomics worth $3 billion. The India-US bond is underpinned by not just global politics, but also business and economics. Washington and New Delhi have been moving closer for over 2 decades now. Successive U.S. presidents have displayed bipartisan support for stronger ties with the emerging Asian economy and regional power. President Joe Biden has built on that legacy and expanded cooperation. The United States sees India as a vital partner in its efforts to push back against China's expanding influence worldwide and strengthen security in the Indo-Pacific. So this visit of Indian Prime Minister is expected to see two countries expand cooperation in defense industry with high-tech sectors. Also, India getting access to critical American technologies that, as I said, Washington rarely shares with non-allies. So this trip is being billed as a milestone, a turning point in relations between the two countries. Prime Minister Modi has been to US 5 times since becoming Prime Minister in 2014, but this is his first state visit to the United States. It also marks the 3rd state visit of Joe Biden's presidency after Emmanuel Macron and Yoon Suk-yeol of South Korea were invited for a state visit. So we have our team fanned out across New York. Joining us from the hotel where Prime Minister Modi is staying is Siddhant Sibal, our principal diplomatic correspondent. Also, we have our correspondents Susan Tehrani and Molly Gambhir joining us from New York. Siddhant, let me come to you first. You know, Prime Minister Modi is in the United States. It's a power-packed visit. First, let's talk about how hugely significant this visit is. You know, this is the only 3rd state visit of Joe Biden's presidency. Prime Minister Modi will be addressing the U.S. Congress the 2nd time, which is a rare honor. This visit is indeed, being projected as a milestone, a turning point in ties between the two countries. Tell us about the significance of this visit.
Well, Rohit, there are several words to describe the visit. Several adjectives are being used to describe the visit. But above all, this visit will see visible manifestation of how both countries are looking forward to build their relationship. As Ambassador Garcetti just a short while ago said in Washington, that the relationship has moved from complicated to we are dating, and that clearly sums up the relationship. In fact, day one was a day full of events and developments and meetings. I'm standing in front of Prime Minister's hotel, and perhaps one of the most star-studded meetings that happened today was with Elon Musk and his comments. I'm a big fan of Prime Minister Modi, is something that we're going to hear more often. The only recent such comment I can remember is of the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese saying that the Indian Prime Minister is the boss, and now Elon Musk saying that he's a fan of Prime Minister Modi. He obviously came up with a lot of praises for the Indian Prime Minister, how Prime Minister Modi has been calling and pushing them to invest in India. And as and when Delhi, of course, wakes up, we will see more dissection of the comments made by Elon Musk, whether it is comments he is coming to India or whether he heaping a lot of praises on Prime Minister Modi's policies and how he sees India as a big and a great investment destination.
Interesting. Stay with us. Siddhant, Susan, let me come to you. Prime Minister Modi has met Tesla chief Elon Musk. Siddhant was telling us about that. Musk has said that he's a fan of Prime Minister Modi, that he's confident that Tesla will be in India and will do so as soon as humanly possible. That's quite a significant statement, isn't it? And a significant meeting as well, given that Prime Minister Modi is wooing American companies as the US makes efforts to, diversify supply chains beyond China.
Yeah, absolutely. Very significant indeed, and also symbolic, meeting someone like Elon Musk, not only the CEO of Tesla, but also, he's at the helm of Twitter as well. Information sharing, really, he calls that the public platform. What this meeting does is really set the stage and the tone for other American businessmen and women to move forward, as you mentioned, as they try to diversify the supply chain issue. And the criticism that Americans are facing right now in doing business with China and the need to decouple from China, really they see a substitute in a place like India, where values and interests really align more than a country like China, for example. So what we're seeing with Elon Musk's meeting is possibly sort of having a domino effect with other business leaders. They'll be watching very closely here in the United States to see what prospects lie ahead, but also Indian private sector businesses will also be watching to see, how this relationship develops. But I think it was very noteworthy that Elon Musk was very honest and said that when I spoke to Prime Minister Modi, it was very clear that he cares a lot about India and he has India's interests in mind at first, as it should be. So, it seems like it was a constructive dialogue between the two.
Yes, Molly, let me also get you in the conversation. The most compelling case for the two countries here to foster even closer ties is, of course, the rise of China. US sees India as a vital partner in its efforts to push back against China's expanding influence and strengthen security in the Indo-Pacific. So India also, we have a standoff with China in eastern Ladakh. So there's a huge convergence of interest there, isn't it?
Indeed, convergence of interests, Rohit, and also multiple opportunities when you look at the mutual interests and how the US and India can collaborate in sectors that are wide-ranging, and technology and defense cooperation being the two key highlights as far as the Indian Prime Minister's visit here is concerned, the maiden state visit that comes with a series of expectations. But when it comes to the potential that the collaboration between the two sides really has, when it comes to deepening defense cooperation, also sharing of technology and lifting barriers on that front, All of that, of course, culminating into the fact that this is a very interesting time at which India and the US are deepening their ties when it comes to the growing realization here in the United States that it does need India to counter China and the kind of potential that India has on that front. So which is why, we've seen the US president and also US officials look at the labels that have been used to describe the Indian Prime Minister's visit here. It's being called a springboard to touch new horizons, also to set new benchmarks as far as a cooperation, as far as defense industry cooperation is concerned. Also, the many defense deals that are on the cards and the deepening strategic partnership sends out a strong message, Rohit, to the entire world, especially China, at a very interesting time like this. I also have to talk about how it's not just about these areas, but also about the growing people-to-people ties that have been talked about, also deepening of the trust that will remain the overarching theme as far as this crucial visit is concerned.
Yes, Siddhant, there are differences that persist between Washington and New Delhi over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. India has not condemned Russia and has urged both sides to resolve differences through diplomacy. So how is Russia going to play? It's a factor in this equation. So how is it going to play out during these bilateral meetings?
Well, both countries are aware of the position India has with Russia, and India has not been hesitant about how the Russians were there when Americans weren't there in the last century. But that doesn't stop Washington and New Delhi to pursue a relationship based on interest. And today there are several converging areas, and I can say that many Indians want to come to India, and these Indians, the 4 million Indian Americans, form the substratum of this relationship. So while Russia is a factor, India and the US today have many converging areas, whether it is people-to-people relationship or whether it is the issue of a very aggressive China.
All right. Susan, I want to understand from you, why is this relationship so significant for the United States and particularly for Joe Biden?
It's very significant, of course. On the one hand, the United States sees India its most important ally in that region, not only because of China, but again, because of issues related to supply chain that go beyond China. They want to talk about healthcare together. They want to talk about the emergence of artificial intelligence. But I do want to put a note on how they say all politics are local. We can't really underestimate the growing importance and significance of the Indian American community here in the United States. Remember, we have an election year here, and a lot of Indian Americans live in swing states. So Prime Minister Modi's visit is also viewed from that perspective as well, considering the fact that not only are they contributing the Indian Americans to technology, the society and culture, but they also go to the ballot box. Some 5 million Indians right now live in the United States, they work in the United States, and they vote. So I think that's very significant. Another significance is you see Indian Americans in the halls of Congress as well, where 10 years ago there was 1 Indian American. Right now we have 5, and then we have someone like Kamala Harris who has partly Indian origins. So for the United States, for this president, this meeting also has a domestic audience as well, although a diaspora, but they will be watching how these two countries work together.
Molly, Prime Minister will be marking the International Day of Yoga there on Wednesday before heading to Washington. There he has a private dinner with Joe Biden on Wednesday, followed by talks at the White House and then a state dinner as well. Susan, talk to us about why it is these ties are significant for the United States. Now, tell us about why is this significant for India, the ties with the United States, and also what are the Prime Minister's priorities during this visit?
Right. I just want to take a cue from what Susan just mentioned in terms of the Indian-American community and the scope and the potential that this relationship really has. This reminds us of the comments that were made by the US President Joe Biden in the run-up to this visit on the sidelines of the G7 summit, where he spoke about how he's inundated with requests for the state dinner, which is to be hosted for the Indian Prime Minister, and how he talked about the popularity of the Indian Prime Minister. So that in itself is a signal of the kind of emphasis that the American side has already been laying as far as this factor is concerned. But yeah, talking about the very fact that the India-US partnership has a lot of these issues that need to be ironed out, as Siddharth was also mentioning. But first and foremost is the very fact that when it comes to defense cooperation, India being a part of this elite club of nations with the help of this crucial GE deal, Rohit, that is one of the very crucial announcements that is expected, or that is going to be formally taking shape in days to come. GE F414 deal, it talks about joint manufacturing of those jet engines and places India in that league of countries to be able to master jet engine technology. Only 4 countries can do that so far. And then if we talk about ISET, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, and why that's crucial, which is another deliverable as far as this visit is concerned, it is about trusted technology partners, India and the US becoming those trusted technology partners, and overall removing barriers as far as sharing of technology is concerned, which again, as experts have been telling us, is a very important message that the US is sending to India, and which is why this visit assumes a lot more significance. But having said that, when it comes to the shared interests that India and the US have, the 2 largest democracies, and the potential that the partnership has, and India being looked at as a country which has mutual interests with the US when it comes to ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific, is something that also works in the favor of both India and the United States, and especially India at a time like this.
All right, Molly, Siddhant and Susan, keep tracking all those developments for us. For the moment, thanks very much for joining us with those details from New York. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is in the United States of America on a historic state visit, will be leading a unique yoga session to commemorate the 9th International Day of Yoga at the UN headquarters. The session will see participation from top UN officials, envoys from across the world, and prominent individuals. Right before the Yoga Day celebration in New York, WION's Molly Gambhir, our principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sibal, and our correspondent Susan Tehrani spoke about the significance of Yoga Day and the Indian Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States. Listen in.
Right here at the United Nations headquarters, North Lawn here in New York, is where the 9th International Yoga Day celebrations are set to take place. The stage is set and the preparations through the last few days have been underway, and we are getting you a sense of what the mood on the ground has been like. We've been speaking to a number of experts as well, and here with me are my colleagues Siddhant Sibal and Susan Tehrani. Coming to you first, Siddhant, it is the 9th edition of the Yoga Day, and India, of course, has been spearheading efforts when it comes to the Yoga Day, when it comes to yoga and its popularity around the world, something that has been lauded by global leaders as well. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi leading the celebrations here is an unprecedented event in itself.
Well, Molly, it's a significant moment for India and the standing of India at the world stage. Now, remember, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2014, during his first address at the United Nations General Assembly, gave this idea of Yoga Day. And since then, it has become a global celebration of sorts. We have seen visuals from across the world. And this time also, it won't be different. We will see those visuals. But what is significant is the popularity of yoga and the popularity of Indian Prime Minister. Both will be seen at the North Lawn of United Nations, where, of course, diplomats and influencers are expected to participate at the Mega Yoga Day celebration.
And there will be eminent personalities from around 180 countries around the world right here in this lawn itself. And we've been speaking to a number of people right here as well who've been telling us about how enthusiastic they are about yoga as a practice itself, Susan. And Indian Americans here are known to practice yoga, but it goes beyond that as well. Give us a flavor of what and how popular yoga practice really is here in New York.
Well, yoga is very popular here in New York. For one thing, there are so many yoga studios and so many online businesses really popped up, notably during the pandemic, because first of all, the pillars that yoga stand for were perfect for someone to stay sane during the pandemic. But second of all you need is a mat. And in New York, we have pretty small apartments for the most part. So it was a perfect practice, and it really became popularized. And then, of course, we've been practicing it for decades, and there are surveys and estimates, the latest one saying that almost 10% of Americans practice yoga regularly. That's about 38 million people. And I'm sure the number is a lot more than that as well. So this is a very significant event. I mean, 2,500 people on the UN's North Lawn simultaneously practicing yoga with Prime Minister Modi is really going to be one for the books, and I can't wait.